All right, today we're going to break down a really fascinating study from the Journal of Experimental Psychology. It's called Power Changes How the Brain Responds to Others, and it gets right to the heart of how social power might actually reshape our brains.
So let's start with the central question here. Does having power actually make us more indifferent to other people? It's a question people have wondered about for centuries, but these scientists went looking for the answer not in our behavior, but deep inside the brain itself.
To really get what this study accomplished, we first need to understand the puzzle that researchers were up against, this long-standing mystery connecting power and empathy.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is a classic case of knowing the what, but not the why. On one side, you have the behavioral consensus. It's pretty well established in psychology that powerful people tend to, well, pay less attention to others. They often rely on stereotypes and don't process social cues as deeply. But on the other side, there's this huge knowledge gap. Why does this happen? What's going on in the brain to cause that behavior? That's the neural mechanism that was, until this study, a total mystery.
So how in the world do you design an experiment to actually peer inside the brain and watch this happen? Let's walk through exactly how they did it. The entire experiment hinges on this key concept called motor resonance. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. When you watch someone else perform an action, like picking up a cup, the part of your brain that would control your arm also becomes active. It's like your brain is silently mirroring or simulating the other person's action. This is thought to be a fundamental way we understand and connect with what other people are doing.
To measure this mirroring effect, they used a really precise tool called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS. They use a magnetic pulse over the motor cortex, the part of the brain that controls movement, and this creates a tiny twitch in a hand muscle. They measure the size of that twitch, which is called a motor evoked potential, or MEP. Now here's the cool part. If your motor resonance is high while you're watching someone, that MEP will be bigger. It's a direct physical measurement of that brain mirroring.
So here's the whole setup in 3 clean stages. First, they had to get people into a high power or low power mindset. They did this through something called episodic priming, where participants wrote about a time they felt powerful or powerless. Second, they took a baseline measurement of their MEPs. And third, they measured the MEPs again while the participants watched a video of a hand squeezing a ball. This design is brilliant because it isolates the one thing they wanted to test, the effect of power.
Let's just break that down one more time, because each step is crucial. Step 1 puts people into the right psychological state: high power, low power, or neutral. Step 2 gives a personalized starting point for each person's brain activity. And that's what makes Step 3 so powerful. By comparing the brain's response during the action video to its own baseline, you get a clean, clear measurement of motor resonance.
All right, now we get to the really good part, the big reveal. What did all this actually show? Let's dig into the data.
The key number they were looking for is called MEP facilitation. All this means is the change in the brain's excitability from that baseline measurement to when they were watching the action. So, a higher MEP facilitation score just means stronger motor resonance. The brain is mirroring that action more intensely. And here's the headline finding. When they ran the analysis, they got a p-value of 0.03. Now, in science, a p-value under 0.05 is the gold standard for statistical significance. It means the result is very unlikely to be a random fluke. This number told the researchers they had found something real, a genuine connection between power and the brain's response.
This chart just lays it out perfectly. Look at that clear, downward staircase. On the far left, you have the low power group. Their motor resonance is high, way above the baseline. Then the neutral group in the middle. And then look at the high power group on the right. Their motor resonance was actually suppressed. It went below the baseline. You couldn't ask for a clearer trend. As the feeling of power goes up, the brain's resonance with others goes down.
And let's put some hard numbers to that visual. The high-power group had an MEP facilitation of negative 4.1%, but the low-power group, they had a positive facilitation of over 26%. That is a massive difference, and it was highly statistically significant.
You know, it wasn't just about being in one group or another. This scatter plot shows it was a continuous effect. Every dot here is one person. The further to the right you go, the more powerful that person felt based on their essay. And as you can see, the more power they felt, the lower their motor resonance was. That downward trend line tells the whole story. It's a direct, negative relationship.
The analysis got even more precise. After they controlled for other things, like the emotions in the essays, they found that for every single point increase in how powerful a person felt, their brain's motor resonance dropped by a whopping 9.3%. That is an incredibly specific and direct link between a psychological feeling and a neural process.
Okay, so we've seen the data. It's compelling. But what does this all mean for the real world? And, just as importantly, what are the limits of what we can conclude from this one study?
The biggest implication is what the authors call the default effect of power. It seems that feeling powerful puts the brain into a kind of default mode where it's just less sensitive to other people, automatically. And this might be the missing link we were talking about earlier. This could be the exact neural mechanism that explains why powerful people tend to rely more on stereotypes. Their brains simply aren't mirroring and simulating others as much to begin with.
Now, as with any great research, the scientists are very clear about the limitations. First, remember they prompted people to recall a specific memory of having power. The authors point out that this might be different from what happens when you think about power more abstractly, as a concept. It's a subtle but important distinction.
And that, of course, points to where the research needs to go next. To really map out the precise brain circuits involved, they suggest that future studies could use tools like fMRI. This study opened a door, and now future research can walk through it to get an even more detailed picture.
So after all of that, let's boil it down. What is the single most important message to take away from this? Here it is. The experience of power isn't just a state of mind. It's not just a feeling. It corresponds to a real, physical, and measurable reduction in your brain's automatic tendency to connect with and mirror the people around you. It changes how you respond to others on a fundamental neural level.
And that leaves us with a really powerful final question to think about. If power naturally and automatically creates a kind of neurological distance between us and other people, what does that mean for leadership? What kind of conscious, deliberate effort does it take for people in power to fight against that default setting and truly stay connected?